This episode of Around the Oval is brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. Hey, Ohio State fans, Alex Gleitman here, back with another edition of Around the Oval. This week, we have someone you are all very familiar with, former Ohio State tight end, Rose Bowl legend, and former NFL player, Jake Ballard. Jake, thanks for joining the show. How are you guys doing?
Alex, thanks for having me, man. We're doing really well here in Columbus, enjoying the warm weather, trying to get out and golf as much as I can, as long as I can get away from work these days.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, being able to golf more than usual, especially during the week, has been a nice silver lining with everything going on because it was kind of
Right,
the only thing you could do, especially here in New Jersey.
right.
For a while, it was like the only outside activity you could do. So my golf game has not gotten any better. Hopefully yours has, but
I'm
you
see,
know.
I'm seeing a slight improvement from week to week.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the more I play, I definitely consistency is there, so that's a good thing. But yeah, man, again, thanks for joining the show. Glad to have you. I think before we jump into the stuff that I would consider less important, but maybe Ohio State fans would consider more important, wanted to give an opportunity. Obviously, I think you stopped playing in the NFL. What was it, like 2013, something
Yeah,
like that?
2013 was my last season. Yep.
Crazy. It's 7 years ago
That
at this
was
point.
crazy.
Feels like yesterday. Yeah. But so tell everyone a little bit about what you've been doing since then and what you're doing now.
Yeah. So when I got out of the league in 2013, well, I actually retired right before 2014 season. Moved back to Ohio, got my real estate license, got into flipping houses, started doing a lot of the work myself. I enjoyed it. It was fun. And then I just decided the market was getting so hot that I was going to help people buy and sell as well. So I've been doing it 6 years now. I'm part owner in a brokerage here in town, Howard Hanna. And I love it. I love working with people, being my own boss, and really everything depends on how well I do, which I'm okay with the pressure in these situations.
Yeah, for sure. You've been in a few pressure spots throughout your playing career. So now that you're a real estate mogul, we'll switch the pressure to there. Definitely anyone out here looking for a house. We have our sponsor for this show is Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. So we have that piece of it squared away for you guys listening. You go to Todd for your mortgage, but now you could go to Jake when you need a new house or when you need to sell your home. So Jake, I want to give you the chance. What's the best way for anyone listening or anyone on Buckeye Scoop to contact you? Is it email? Is it LinkedIn? Like, what's the
Honestly,
best way?
best way is probably through my social media, probably Instagram, um, just Jake Ballard RE, or my cell phone. But that's pretty easily too. Just Google that, and you'll be able to find that anywhere you look.
Awesome. Well, yeah, definitely everyone hit up Todd for your mortgage, hit up Jake when you need a new house or you need to sell your house for sure. That's awesome to hear that you're doing well. It's always good to see guys, post football, having a career off the field. So glad to see you're doing well. Let's talk about your playing days though, starting with Ohio State. Actually, let's start before Ohio State. You were a
Okay.
star at Springboro High School. Um, you had a number of different offers. I think what you have, you had Team Up North, you had Wisconsin, I think Boston College, Michigan State, Louisville. I know you were getting some basketball looks too, right? So you had
Yeah.
you had pretty good options.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think I had like 30 D1 offers for football. Notre Dame was a couple, almost all the Big Ten, some ACC, only a couple of the SEC, and then a bunch of some smaller MAC schools. And basketball wise, a lot of smaller D1 schools, some MAC schools, some of the private schools on the East Coast and stuff. But that wasn't really going to work out for me.
Well, I think football worked out, so you probably picked the right thing. But
So
what I wanted to ask you about that, so like obviously you ended up at Ohio State. I think you committed, what was it, like almost a year or maybe like 6 months before signing day. I think it was like summer of 2005, if I remember
yeah,
correctly. But yeah, I saw a picture of you recently. I think you posted it on Instagram. You found it of you in like an '86 jersey as a kid.
yeah,
It's pretty crazy how that, there's how many kids do that, right? Like they
right.
get their personalized Ohio State jersey as a kid, and then not many get to end up wearing it. Was it for you? Was it always Ohio State when they offered, or did you seriously consider other programs?
I actually grew up a big basketball fan. I love basketball. It was my first love. I always thought I was going to play at Duke, play basketball at Duke. That's kind of what I grew up doing and watching. Then obviously the older I got, the more football experience I got, I started getting more interest in football. That picture you're talking about, I got a personalized jersey my freshman year in high school. I actually started varsity a freshman that year. We weren't very good, but I got that jersey for Christmas. Then once it started getting hot and heavy, probably my sophomore and junior year, I was kind of getting offers from a lot of different places. And Ohio State was showing interest, but weren't pulling the trigger. I was doing the tour, the college tours, unofficial visits. I was going to Indiana, Notre Dame, IU, Michigan State. I went to the team up north a couple times, more than a couple times. And, Ohio State still didn't step up. And I remember it was the summer before my senior year. I'm pretty sure it was the summer before my senior year. I get a call from my football coach. He's like, guess what? Michigan just offered. I was like, oh, man, really? He's like, yeah. Now, Coach Peterson told me if this happened to keep him in the loop, to keep him and Tress on the loop, just because they didn't want to lose you if that happened. He's like, so I'm going to call him and tell him the same thing. So I go out. My dad was mowing. I was doing homework, I don't know what I was doing. I ran out, told him, I was like, Michigan just offered. He was going nuts. He's pretty pumped. And then I got a call 15 minutes later saying Ohio State just offered. So then I went back out there, and he was just speechless. And neither of us really knew what to say. We were so excited. And, me trying to be a level-headed 17-year-old kid, I was like, Dad, I really need to, I've been to Ohio State. I know what they offer. I was like, we really need to go out and check out Michigan. We've been there once. I think we were there once. So I was like, we need to see everything they offer, see what the facilities are like, coaches, spend more time there. And my dad was like, do you really want to go to Michigan? I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, do you want to go to Ohio State? And I was like, yes. He's like, well, why do we need to go to Michigan? I was like, well, I guess you're right. And that was basically it. I mean, that happened. Prior to that, I talked to Lloyd Carr on the phone, I think the next day at school with my football coach for like maybe 5 minutes. Then I talked to Tressel right after that. Talked to him for maybe 20 minutes on the phone, getting to know him. He's asking me all these questions. Then fast forward, and that's when I had the conversation with my dad. And, obviously I don't regret it. He was right. He's like, why do we need to go up there and check Michigan out? You already know where you want to go. I was like, let's do it. Go Bucks.
That's awesome. There was no way Tress was losing to Michigan at any point,
Right.
let alone for a kid in his own state. So, yeah, that must have been pretty cool. I mean, you obviously you made, I think, the right decision. 4 years there. You guys played in 2 national championships. You won a bunch of Big Ten titles. You were 4-0 against Michigan. Pretty amazing. Looking back on your time there, is there one, let's talk favorites. What's your favorite? Was there one memory, one game, one play? I might have an idea of that, but what sticks out in your mind from your time at Ohio State?
We going with the good or the bad?
Both, I guess, right?
No, I mean, when I think about my time at Ohio State, I think automatically to the times when we kind of underperformed in bowl games because, they say you'll write a chapter after a win, but a book after a loss. And I think the losses stick with you more. At Ohio State, we won a lot of games and there's a lot of winning, Big Ten, regular season, and even my Rose Bowl. But I think probably the LSU game probably sticks out to me the most because that was a game where we had so many opportunities to win and we were the better team and we just made some mistakes down the stretch that cost us. But some of the happier memories, I'll never forget freshman year going down to Texas and beating Texas. And then that's when we were actually rotating groups. Troy was the quarterback, so it was his Heisman year. The second drive, the second team goes in besides Troy. So I was in there, and we actually scored the touchdown. The whole second, most of the second line, second tight end, and it was crazy. And I remember when we got in the 5-yard line, he called this passing play where I was going on around. I was like, little did I know we don't throw the tight ends. I was like, I might catch this touchdown. But Gonzo caught it, and I'll just never forget that whole atmosphere down there was insane. And then, obviously, probably the Rose Bowl, my senior year, going out with a win, finally having a win in a bowl game. If you would have told me when I was getting recruited at Ohio State, I would only win one bowl game, I'd say you're insane. That's when, Tress was big game Tress. Anyway, going on to win the Rose Bowl and making that catch and really contributing is something I'll never forget.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up two things that were on my list to talk to you about. The first is the national title games. The first one, well, I don't know if we want to talk about that one, but the second one was definitely winnable. But I guess for both of them, I think the first one came as a bigger shock to Ohio State fans just because you guys rolled that year through everyone. And even Michigan at the end, I mean, it was 42-39, but it was 42-31 just with a few minutes left, right? Like, I never felt like you guys were going to lose that game. You always kind of felt in control, especially, down the stretch. But the second one, I think people felt like maybe lucked in a little bit with, I think it was like West Virginia lost and Oklahoma lost.
The same week.
Yeah. I mean, you only needed one of them. It actually would have been better if only one of them lost maybe. But, LSU, I think everyone just thought was pretty good and the SEC was pretty good. And so like, I don't think anyone went into that game, like expecting to like really not win, but like to like, it could have went either way, I guess is what I'm saying. So like, for you, in your mind, being part of that experience, and I know Barton's shared this with the board, but like, what do you feel went wrong in those two games? Like, where did you guys go wrong?
I think we had some questionable, and I kind of want to say questionable. We had some tough play calling towards the end. Sometimes when we got in the red zone, ran a couple of the same looks that we ran all year, and that's how we got there, and we had the players to get it done. And they just stuffed us a couple times. We had a couple big drops that would have been game changing. We had the blocked field goal. I mean, the roughing the passer on the punt. That was huge. And defensively, I feel like my whole time in Ohio State, it was almost like we always had trouble guarding tight ends. And, they had their tight end who caught 3 touchdowns that day. And I don't even think he hung around the league very long. I can't remember his name, but I mean, it's almost seemed like the Clemson game this year. I'm not comparing our team to Ohio State this year. Ohio State's team this year is the best I've ever seen. But there was like 10 things that had to go wrong in that game for Clemson to win. And that's almost how I felt with looking back now, 10 years later, 9 years later, whatever it is. It's just, it's unfortunate and it is what it is. But we definitely could have, I think, gave them a better shot. And we should have sealed the deal earlier in that game. Yeah,
for sure. I agree. I remember there was one, it might have been a drop. I forget what it was. It was Robisky early in the game, and you guys would have went up 14-0, and you went up 10-0. And I think that was a big one. And then I remember like Beanie was running. He was beating them early, and then you guys went away from it for some reason. I don't know. I don't know if he panicked a little bit because of the year before or what, but
I don't know. Beanie came out of the gate and they had a pretty good defensive line then. So, they definitely were some monsters up front. I think they had Glenn Dorsey and Tracy. I mean, I can't remember this other big guy. And I can see him, number 93, dreads. Anyway, can't remember his name, but they were solid. I'm not sure, man. It is what it is.
All right. We won't dig the knife in any further. The other thing I did want to talk to you about, though, is you mentioned little did you know then how little Ohio State threw to the tight end. I mean, how frustrating was it for you, like how little the ball came to tight end? And why do you think Ohio State has not been able to have a big-time tight end stat-wise? It's crazy because it wasn't just Tress. It's Urban. And Urban had some big ones at Florida. And now even Day last year, I mean, they use more guys now. I think they use 3 tight ends pretty consistently, or Urban and Day have. But, I mean, it still feels like do you think it's just that they have so many weapons outside that there's only so many balls to go around, or what do you think it is?
When I was there, if you're a top recruit or a top tight end or whatever, you think you're going to go there and you're going to change the landscape. You'll get the ball more. And early on, like in my career at Ohio State, we ran that pro-style offense, and we had incredible backs. And we had good guys on the outside, and we played trestle ball. We controlled the clock. We weren't going to blow teams out. And that all those went into it. And especially my junior, senior year, when I'm getting the most playing time, our quarterback was Terrell. And God love him, he just wasn't the best passer, but he was a heck of an athlete and scrambler. So, yes, those plays might have been called, but if Terrell had a chance to run for a first down or run for into the end zone, he was going to do it. And it is what it is. Nowadays, I look at these rosters and I really do think they have so much talent. There's just so many balls that can go around. And Day's bringing that NFL mindset that he's going to play matchups. So from week to week, it might change. And you saw that. You'd see tight ends get a couple touchdowns in one game, then not be seen for 4 or 5 other games. And my buddies, Tim Hall and Brandon Beam, would always be like, oh, this is the year. I'm like, let's see 3 or 4 games in a row, and then I'll tell you, whether it's the year or not. But, I think they do. Jeremy Rucker's a stud. Luke's a stud. And I think they're both prototypical NFL tight ends.
Yeah, Jeremy's from out here in Long Island. I got to see him throughout high school. I think he's a stud, and I think he's a guy this year who, to your point with matchups, especially with a couple veteran guys moving on from the receiving core, maybe he's a guy that could split out a little bit and exploit some matchups against linebackers or safeties. So I'm not going to say this is the year, but I'm hoping that they finally use him. And then Luke, Luke's pretty good. I mean, he's pretty standard for what you've seen from Ohio State. He's a guy who I think will have a chance to play in the league. Yeah, go ahead.
He's a super solid blocker. He can definitely catch the ball if you ask him to, and he can run routes. It's just not what they're not asking their tight ends to, a little more this year in their day. They're actually getting them on the line, putting their hand in the dirt a little bit, but it's just not what they've asked to. I've seen a lot of tight ends playing in the NFL right now who can't block anybody. So I think Luke could get in there, be a mid-round guy, and get on a team and earn a spot.
Yeah, for sure. One last thing I want to ask you about, just because I know this is something really fans are a lot interested in, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. I guess it was, your junior year or your senior year? It must have been your junior year is the year where Terrell was a freshman, Todd was the quarterback, and there was kind of that, like, very clear, even if you weren't in that locker room, there was a very clear divide on that team of Terrell guys and Todd guys. And I know you're not the type of guy who would really get caught up in like the drama of that or whatnot, but what was it like, what was that experience like seeing that kind of unfold, and like how much impact, like that team, you lost in the Fiesta Bowl to Texas that year?
Yeah, we went 10-3 that year.
Yeah, I mean, so, you lost the game to USC. That was like obviously a disaster. Then the Penn State game, that was a rough one at home. But, what was it like? How much impact did that have on the team? And what was that like, inside the locker room? Speaking on what you can, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously it's been a while. But, Todd was the guy who got us the national championship the year before and did really well. He was having a little bit of a rough start. And, Terrell came on campus, and there was the learning curve for sure with any high school player to a major college football program. And you could just, his raw talent and athletic ability was jumping off the film, watch him on the field and see him pull away from guys. And you could tell that Todd felt the heat a little bit. Right or wrong or indifferent, should Todd have probably got his job lost as early as he did? Probably not in my eyes. But Terrell turned into be a huge factor offensively the rest of his career. Could we have won some of those games we lost with Todd in there all the time? I think definitely. So, I mean, unfortunately, there's just not room for 2 quarterbacks. I think we could have had as successful a season, if not more, with Todd the whole time. The USC deal was a bad deal. Beanie was out. Our starting tackles were both out. Young guys were in there, and their whole 7 guys on their defense all went top 3 rounds. 4 of them went in the first round. I mean, it's hard to. I mean, they had Everson Griffin, Clay Matthews, your boy over there in Jersey.
Yeah, Cushing, Maluga.
Yeah,
Taylor Mays.
Taylor Mays in the backfield. And then their other linebacker, their 4th linebacker got drafted in the 3rd round. I can't even remember his, went to the Bengals. Can't remember his name right now. But just full of talent. It's crazy.
Yeah, that was a rough one. The Penn State one was tough, and maybe a veteran, you could have. But I was glad Todd at least went out in that Fiesta Bowl. He came down and he threw the touchdown to Terrell on that drive. That was pretty sweet. So that was a cool moment for him to at least go out like that,
Yeah, I always told people after that game, I was like, Ohio State doesn't want to throw the tight end so bad that they bring in our backup quarterback to split our quarterback out wide to throw him the football. And then
That's great. That is great. But yeah, no, but I can imagine how frustrating it was for you. I mean, you put in all the work and you think this is going to be finally the game I get the ball, but obviously, you did pretty well. It probably cost you a shot to get drafted, but at the same time, you were able to sign with the G-Men. And then, I think it was your second year, you really came on. You ended up becoming the starter for a team that went to the Super Bowl. I know you had the big touchdown against New England in the regular season. And then, obviously, you guys had a pretty good run during the playoffs. What was that experience like? I mean, going from undrafted to starting tight end for what ended up being the best team in the NFL.
Man, it was just like a dream come true. I mean, it was almost like my coming out party. I didn't really get to experience that in college. I was a big key player in our seasons in a lot of our games, but I wasn't catching the ball. And here I finally earned my spot. I was getting the ball. I think I led the league in yards per catch for tight ends. All right.
All good.
Let me turn that off. Led the league in yards per catch. And then, it just seemed like every game that me and Eli started getting our, developed more of a connection. And he was always looking for me. And it was a cool year, man. I love New York. I love Jersey. I love the people out there. I love the organization. I had a lot of pride being a New York Giant. And I would have loved to not got hurt and then in my career early, but I would have loved to stay there my, 10 years plus.
Yeah, man. I remember watching the Super Bowl. I'm sure everyone was. And, you hurt your knee. And then I just remember feeling sick over seeing you try to run on the sidelines and just kind of collapsing. I mean, it was amazing because you're in the Super Bowl, but at the same time, you're probably sitting there holy crap, my not only my game, but who knows moving forward. Talk us through that whole experience.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I was running a route and made a cut with my left leg and tore my knee, tore my ACL on the field, but the doctors kind of misdiagnosed me. So they taped me back up and had me run back and forth to see if it was. And I told them I wasn't feeling great, definitely fell off. But then they told me to try and stop. And that's when I went down. I tried to stop without an ACL. And, your two femoral heads hit each other. And it was one of the worst pains I've ever had in my life. And then they wheeled me off into the locker room, and there was only 7 minutes to go when I got hurt. Well, in the locker room, there's no TV, there's no service. We don't have radio. I'll never forget me and this doctor in there. I can't remember his name, but we were just we kept hearing crowd noises, and we didn't know who was scoring, what was happening. So eventually, I start hopping down the hallway of the stadium to try and see the field. Eventually, he gets a golf cart. We go out there, and we get out there just in time to see the last play of my future teammates. I saw Tom. Tom got the snap and chucks it down the field, and then I just see Gronk and Aaron go up for it, but then the ball hits the ground, and it was oh my gosh, we just won the freaking Super Bowl. So it just took off on the field in the golf cart and tried to live it up as much as I could.
Listen, if you're going to end basically, I know you play a little bit more after, but if you're going to end your career one way, at least you went out winning a Super Bowl, right?
Lost. I could have lost.
That would have been worse, right?
Yeah. And then I have nothing.
Yeah. You got a Super Bowl ring. You're forever Super Bowl champion and a key part of that team. And then for some reason, the Giants dumbly after that year, I remember, put you on the IR, which exposed you to waivers. And then in true Belichick fashion, thinking he could come in, steal you for a year while you rehab, and then have 3 awesome tight ends grabbed you.
We can dive into that if you want.
I was just going to say, what was it like? Dude, you were on the Pats. Number one, what was that like? But then, also, it was Hernandez and Gronk. That must have been an experience, right?
It was. Well, so what happened was, Giants knew I wasn't playing. It was during minicamp. They knew I wasn't playing 2012 season. So for some reason, they wanted to put me on IR. If they would have just waited until training camp, they could have put me on IR. I wouldn't have to go to waivers, and I would have been fine. But for some reason, Jerry Reese thought, oh, no one's going to claim you. It's kind of an unwritten rule. You're injured. No one's going to want you to sit out this year anyway. And I said, told him back what my agent told me. I'd really like to not do this. There's a good chance somebody would take a chance on me and pick me up and just sit and wait for me to get healthy. He's like, oh, no one will do that. And I'll never forget, Coach Coughlin called me. He was out of the office, and he was super mad. He's like, Jake, you're a smart kid. We love you here. You were a big part of our success this year. I love you. But you know that I don't always get to make all the calls. And he's like, I'm praying to God that you don't get picked up tomorrow and that you're still a New York Giant. And then, long story short, I didn't even go to the facility because I wasn't technically on the team. I was just stayed at home. I remember I was just hanging out, I think doing laundry, watching movies. And then they told me to come to the facility. They think it was over. And I'm there just hanging out like normal. And Jerry Reese's little runner comes over, and he's like, to Ronnie, I was talking to Ronnie Barnes, and he's like, hey, Ronnie, did you tell him? He's like, I'm not telling him. I said, tell me what? He's like, you'll never believe it. The Patriots picked you up the last 5 minutes of the waiver wire. I'm like, you've got to be effing kidding me. He's like, no, we just all are dumbfounded. And I was like, I told you this was going to happen. So I called my agent. He's like, BS. I haven't got a call from anybody. And as I was on the phone with him, he was getting a call from Foxborough. And he's like, I think they're calling me right now. I'll call you back. He talked to him. Obviously, it was them. I'm watching the last minicamp practice. People are starting to hear about me not getting picked up. Guys are coming over to me in the middle of practice, pissed, like, stop talking, stop practicing. Coughlin's face is so red and angry, he just couldn't do anything. He couldn't even talk to me. And it was like, well, I guess I'm going to Boston against my will. Honestly, I just couldn't – I had no say in the matter. But that was that experience. But I actually really enjoyed my time in New England. A lot of really good guys. Tom Brady's one of the obviously best teammates I've ever been around. Great person, great leader. Everything you read about him and see about him is absolutely true. I got to play with our boy Nate Epner up there for a year and a half. It's another Buckeye. And
now he's a Giant.
Huh?
Now he's a Giant, I think.
Now he's a Giant. Yep. I got to play with him. I played golf with him this year, a couple weeks ago when he was back home. And yeah, obviously got to be around Belichick, and I have a ton of respect for him and what he does. Is a mastermind. It seems like he takes care of, he appreciates or respects players who beat him in other places more than like guys he would bring in that have to prove it to him. So it's almost like they've already proved to him that you could play. And yeah, I did, our tight end room at one point was me and Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski, and it was pretty nuts.
Would you have ever have known what we now know about Aaron Hernandez back then?
Honestly, no. I mean, look, Aaron obviously had some issues we all know now. But he was a normal guy sometimes. Sometimes he'd be in a bad mood, but who couldn't? I mean, I know a lot of jerks who play football that I don't think go around killing people. Aaron was nice sometimes, and he wasn't sometimes, and that just whole situation is super sad. I mean, with Odin Lloyd and his family going through it, and Aaron's child and his fiance, it's the whole thing is terrible, and it was a shock to everyone there.
Yeah, man, it's pretty crazy. We have a few minutes left, so we're going to go to just a couple questions from fans. We could kind of just rapid fire through these. First one is, exactly how many times did you replay Brent Mussberger's Rose Bowl call when he says, "And there's our man Ballard," when you got home?
I'd say probably 5 times pretty quickly.
5? I think I've seen it more than 5. So.
Well, no, we said right after it happened.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, right after you got home?
Yeah.
5?
Yeah.
That was enough for you?
Since then, I have no idea. Maybe 100.
Next question. Remember when Dum Troy Everhart ran the ball right at you all 4 downs on the goal line in the playoffs that time? I don't know what that is. It must be from your high school days.
High school.
Someone has some things stinging them, I guess. What are we, like, I don't know, 15 years later, something like that?
shoot, Troy Everhart. I don't even know who that is. We played a couple playoff games. I think it was probably Winton Woods, and we did a goal line stop to beat them in the first round of the playoffs.
It must have been that. It must have been that. Someone said, so it's Hewlett Buckeye. You may know him, big Long Island guy, probably all over you when you were in New York. What was your favorite catch at OSU and for the Giants? He also says, thank you for all the stuff you and Jimmy Cordell donated to raise money for Relay for Life.
Well, Ohio State obviously is probably the Rose Bowl catch, and New York would probably be the 3rd and 18 the regular season for first the Patriots in New England to keep that drive alive, and eventually got caught the winning touchdown too. But we ended up spoiling their 25 home winning streak and ended it that game too.
Yeah, I feel like that catch was pretty resemblant of the Rose Bowl catch to some extent. So
there's a couple cool pics of both of those, which I don't have in the house anywhere, but I probably should.
Yeah, for sure. Second to last question. What do you like about Ryan Day's offense, and what do you see in the tight ends? We've already talked about what you saw in the tight ends a little bit, but what do you like about Ryan Day's offense?
Besides all the weapons, I think, I kind of said it earlier, how he takes that NFL mindset and game plans per the team, per your opponent. That's what good NFL teams do. They don't, most teams evaluate what they're good at, and that's what they're going to do. Where, the NFL mindset is, okay, who's their team, what are their weaknesses, and how can we do that with our roster of guys? And I feel like that's how Ryan Day approaches the offense. And I love how he approaches the team, which is love first, love and lead out of love. And I think that's why he gets players to do anything for him.
For sure. And then last question is, so I'm going to kind of change it. It was basically knowing Tressel's offense and how little the ball would get thrown to you. What was your criteria for selecting OSU? If Urban was knocking at your door with an offer back then, how would that have changed your decision, if any? I'll let you answer that. I mean, I think, as you said, everyone thinks they're going to be the guy to change the offense. And Ben Hartsock went to the NFL right before you and whatnot. But I guess first, I'll say, if Urban came knocking with an offer back then, he wasn't even Urban Meyer just yet then, but would it have changed your decision? And do you regret going to Ohio State based on how little the ball was thrown your way?
Urban wouldn't have changed anything. I think that was my first year at Ohio State was his first year at Florida.
It may be his second, yeah.
Yeah, second, sorry. So when I was getting recruited, he was there 1 year. Yeah. His second year is when he beat us. So didn't know much about him. Plus I wasn't going to Florida. And no, I don't regret going to Ohio State at all. The one thing I think some of the guys that I've played with would be interested in seeing is how Urban and Mickey Marotti and those coaches would have transformed the rosters we had, and how far our teams could have gone, or how many points we could put up in those offenses and those defenses.
Yeah, I always said I want to see Ted Ginn in Urban Meyer's offense.
Or Troy, what I mean? Troy's in
Troy or Terrell even. I mean, Imagine Terrell.
Well, Terrell and more Urban's offense, and Troy more in that Ryan Day Urban hybrid. I mean, like Dwayne and Justin last year. So
yeah, for sure. Well, awesome, man. Glad to hear everything is going well for you. This was awesome. Stroll down memory lane. I wish we had more time, but definitely want to get you out of here. Appreciate you jumping on the show, and definitely wishing you guys continue to stay safe and healthy.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you having me.
This episode of Around the Oval was brought to you by Todd Pennington with Renovation Mortgage. If you've been thinking about refinancing or buying a house, check out our sponsor, Todd Pennington with Renovation Mortgage. They offer low rates for refinancing and home purchase loans, including first-time home buyer programs, down payment assistance, and cash-out home equity loans. Check out revolutionmortgage.com/tpennington.